The vast majority of illicit drugs being sold in American communities come from outside our borders. They are smuggled into the U.S. by transnational drug trafficking organizations, known as DTOs. DTOs traffic huge amounts of drugs into the U.S. every year. The Drug Enforcement Administration's answer to the international origins of the illicit drugs on our streets is an extensive global mission, working with host nations. Because of this, many DEA employees spend time working abroad to help make Americans safer back home. Drug trends are constantly changing and shifting, and DEA has a long history of pivoting to meet new challenges as they emerge. To create this video, we interviewed retired employees discussing pivotal moments in DEA history. They shared with us about their experiences as the agency fought major threats to American safety and security. We asked our interviewees why DEA's global mission is important to the safety and security of the American public.
The global nature of DEA's mission, that is DEA's bread and butter, in my opinion. It gives DEA access to assets around the world, but it also shows that DEA's commitment is not only to addressing the narcotics issue here within our country, but we follow it back to the source where those drugs are being created so that we can attack it from A to Z.
Because we're able to work with friendly foreign law enforcement and also to work in countries that are source countries for drugs coming to the United States, we can help in interdiction at the source. We can identify production and manufacturing facilities at the source and help those governments and train those governments to basically go in and interdict before it ever gets on the high seas or gets to the United States.
In the mid-20th century, U.S. law enforcement realized that to combat the increasing amounts of illicit drugs being trafficked in American communities, they needed to go to their source countries and collaborate with local counterparts. At the time, a major threat was Turkish heroin being trafficked by the Corsican Mafia through France to New York. DEA and its predecessor agencies participated in one of the first international drug law enforcement operations to put a stop to the crimes, which became known as the French Connection.
Pre-war clandestine manufacture of heroin in France came about through the ability of the French underworld to obtain morphine base from Yugoslavia and Turkey and transport it via rail and via ship into Marseille or by rail into Paris. And that was a heavy route. They probably shipped as much by rail as they did by ship. And these were probably in 5 and 10 kilo shipments. And even then, the link up with the organizations that they were supplying in New York, all of this went to New York. And we did not find many French in New York at that time. Their connections were through mafia types frequently into New York mafia types. And cases were made, prosecutions went forward, and some heavy sentences were handed down.
During the Vietnam War, American troops encountered heroin, marijuana, and other drugs. DEA and its predecessor agencies were there, working with Vietnamese counterparts from 1968 through the end of the war in 1973. Soon after, large quantities of heroin were being trafficked into the U.S. from Southeast Asia, and DEA worked with local partners across the region to take down numerous powerful drug trafficking kingpins.
When I got involved with this case, it was back in 1975, and we were pulling our troops out of Vietnam. The Army Criminal Investigation Division was about to leave Bangkok, where I had just been stationed. And one of their officers had an informant he wanted to turn over to DEA before he left. I went over, I interviewed this informant. He told me about this secretion creep room that he had actually worked for and was now in a competitive type business. And I thought, he was just trying to eliminate his business competition until he said that Sakri wanted to smuggle 25 kilograms of heroin to the United States.
In the 1980s, drug trends shifted to South America and the Caribbean with the rise of the Medellin cartel and its notorious leader, Pablo Escobar. The cartel smuggled hundreds, perhaps thousands of tons of cocaine, causing a major spike in addiction and violence that rocked the country. DEA deployed numerous operations and focused heavily on this major drug threat until Escobar was killed in 1993 and his cartel crumbled.
I went to Colombia in April of 1983, and it was crazy. It was chaotic. Bombings, shootings, a lot of things going on. It changed rapidly 83 and 84 into early 85 as well because of the campaigns that the cartels had against Americans in particular.
We saw at that time, through the creation of the Medellin cartel and the drug trafficker who became known as the world's first narco-terrorist, who at one point in his life was the world's most wanted criminal. We're talking about Pablo Escobar. We saw an individual who introduced a level of drug trafficking and manufacture and violence that the world had not seen before. At that time, and we're talking about the 80s and early 90s, Pablo Escobar was the largest cocaine distributor in the world. He was the world's first narco-terrorist. Now, what's a narco-terrorist? We've never heard that term. It's basically a narcotics trafficker, just that employs terroristic activities in their daily criminal operations. It's that simple.
A pivotal operation DEA launched in this era was called Snowcap. Operation Snowcap, deployed across 12 South American countries, was DEA's first paramilitary operation in partnership with the State Department. Agents volunteered and underwent special training, followed by temporary deployment to South America. There, they partnered with local forces to interdict DTOs across the continent. Snowcap enjoyed many successes, but also tragedy when a plane crashed in a remote, mountainous region of Peru, killing 5 agents in 1994.
I knew everybody on that flight that was killed. I knew 4 of them really well. And so it took a whole new meaning to why we leave. You leave your family, and they know that they've had this tragedy. You have to, they worry about you. It made us closer because we realized that we have to rely on each other in these times that are, like I said, they're tough times, whether it's in combat or whether it's just marching through the jungle.
Snowcap was a program. It was a counter-drug operation designed to eliminate basically cocaine production and labs within South and Central America.
DEA's greatest assets in Snowcap was the ability for us to deploy skilled teams that were specifically designed and trained to address the issues in the jungle environment. We had in-country agents that were there that were the full-time investigators that were initiating the cases, but they oftentimes were so busy on putting the investigations together, they didn't have the time or the ability to train to do the jungle operations. So DEA Snowcap was a special operation that we specially trained people to go down there and assist the in-country offices with their investigations by conducting those jungle operations to locate and destroy clandestine labs, clandestine airstrips, and identify their transshipment routes and try to interrupt those. We were hitting these cartels right at their source so that they couldn't even get operations off the ground at times. So the amount of drugs that we were able to disrupt or prevent from being produced and the stuff we were able to seize, I think that was a great success for DEA.
We felt like between Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru, we were having a big impact. I think also, too, the partnerships with our foreign nationals really helped, too. It helped our foreign offices now because we would go down and make the partnerships in some of these remote areas that we never had access to. And in the host office would benefit from our relationships.
When the teams arrived, we had target packages. We were working targets against the highest level traffickers. We had work where they had one down day and they were working, doing 2 ops a day. So we just had a constant flow. So that part of Snowcap greatly improved in 91 1990, 91, 92, 93. And I was part of that operation till 94 when we got our stand-down orders.
In the wake of the terrorist attacks on 9/11, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, where it encountered the violent insurgent groups Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. The groups used proceeds from drug trafficking to fund their violent agendas.
Prior to 9/11, the DEA had collected incontrovertible intelligence that bin Laden and his terrorist fighters were supporting themselves inside Afghanistan by providing security to heroin labs and drug shipments out of Afghanistan, principally into Pakistan's northwest frontier province and Baluchistan regions. As U.S. military and coalition forces began military action inside Afghanistan, DEA was actually able to provide direct intelligence nearly daily on not just the location and movement of Al-Qaeda and Taliban fighters inside Afghanistan, but also detailed information on scores of them fleeing Afghanistan across the Pakistani border, allowing our partners in the Pakistani ISI, their inter-services intelligence, to scoop them up by the droves and hand them off to American forces.
From when I first arrived in Afghanistan in 2004 up until about 2006, we were fighting with a lot of other agencies who refused to acknowledge the nexus between terrorism and narcotics. Based on all the intelligence, in most of the cases DEA did in Afghanistan, we were able to show that narcotics was fueling terrorism, not just in Afghanistan, but around the world.
Allied forces realized they needed help interdicting the violent and powerful drug traffickers operating across the country, and DEA stepped in to help. DEA launched the Foreign Deployed Advisory Support Teams, known as FAST, which was modeled on the earlier operation, Snowcap. The teams utilized their specialized skills in investigating DTOs, including establishing local confidential informants and establishing strong partnerships to interdict and neutralize vast amounts of illicit drugs destined for the international black market. FAST was highly successful, but sadly, tragedy struck DEA again when a helicopter crashed in 2009, killing 10, including 7 U.S. Army service members and 3 DEA special agents.
As a result of those FAST teams and that intelligence and that partnership, we also extradited the first Afghan drug leader, Haji Baz Mohammed, whose goal was to kill Americans with drugs. The first extradition wouldn't have happened without that partnership and without the FAST teams.
Our mission was multi-pronged. Obviously, we were part of the drug flow attack strategy, so our goal was to take intelligence and attack known targets in their heroin labs, for example, or the money pipeline through their money networks in country. So we would further investigations where we would be fed intelligence, but at the same time we're gathering intelligence on the missions and in between missions to assist a larger investigation, maybe that was originated here in the States.
We went in to go after to destroy the heroin labs, to gather up evidence, to build the cases and take it back to stateside.
War on terror was happening. The U.S. had invaded Afghanistan. We were doing our part there, absolutely. But that exists today. That exists in every office, in every overseas posting. Like, the DEA work is so fundamental to protecting Americans. And it may happen in Raleigh, North Carolina, or it may happen in Kabul, Afghanistan, but fundamental, essential, and it's part of being a servant for the American people.